here today on the Writer's Block. We have Miss Shay Galloway, author of The Journey of Sage and Juniper. So we're going to give you a chance to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your writing background and where you're from.
So I'm Shay Galloway. I'm the author of Valley of Sage and Juniper, which releases on March 21st, so just a couple more weeks. Um, it is um, it is the story of two sisters growing up in the Rocky Mountain Rest, and a mysterious creature shows up and tries to take their land from them. So that's the whole premise of that story. I I grew up kind of all over, but when I was in middle school, well, late elementary school, we moved to Wyoming, kind of near Jackson Hole, so right up in the mountains. And then I attended Utah State University in 2012 with a bachelor's in English with a creative writing emphasis. And then in 2015, I started grad school at Roosevelt University, where I got my MFA in creative writing. And then I graduated there in 2017, and the next year I moved to Washington State, and I am now an adjunct English professor at a local community college.
That all sounds great. Oh my goodness, you got a lot going on. I feel like I didn't read all of your bio because you added some stuff on. So you are currently living where? You said, I'm sorry.
In Washington State, so
No.
in Olympia, but most people don't know Olympia, so I usually just say Seattle, but I'm about 50 miles south of Seattle.
So it's cold. Is it cold?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking about the first thing that popped into my head was snow. I was like, oh,
It actually doesn't snow that much here. It did in Chicago and it did in Wyoming, and I was like, I don't really want snow. So it is cold here, but it's not that cold. It's actually pretty mild here.
okay. I was thinking it's like freezing. It's like actually not to make you jealous, 78 degrees here right now.
Yeah, you're in Georgia.
Yes, in
Yeah,
the Atlanta area. So it's like it's been on and off, kind of cold and warm. It's just going back and forth. But
yeah.
watching this, you
It's
sound like you've also traveled quite a lot. I'm a military brat as well. Was that military or were you just a traveler?
I'm sort of like second generation military brat. Like my mom was a military brat, but she just sort of kept moving. And so I just sort of got that bug in me where I'm like, I gotta try new places and new things every few years.
That's how I feel. I think that's because of that too. Because I'm like, I get antsy if I stay in one place too long. So yeah, we've traveled a lot mostly when I was little, and I'm like, kind of glad we don't travel that much anymore. But then I'm like, I need to do something. I need to go somewhere all the time. So it's like a taboo to it. And also, so the story that you did write, what genre would you say that it is? The Journey of Sage and Juniper.
So it is kind of a literary western, I guess you could say.
That's what I
Um,
was like Western, like
it's light on the literary part and light on the western part. So it's yeah, I would call it a second generation western too because it takes place in the 1930s. But it is, it's literary, but it does have a plot. There is a lot of character focus on it, and it is very character driven. I mean, so there is a plot, but it is like it's not very quick moving. It is 400 pages long, so it does, take a little. It's a little slower, but I mean, it's the West. Things are a little bit slower. It
right.
takes.
I think Westerns are slow. Well, that's a good point. I think westerns are pretty slow, and I actually that's what interested me because me and my dad used to watch westerns together all the time. So I was just like, I don't see many women, writing westerns like this. So that's what really got me interested in you as well. What is your favorite character? How did you come up with your characters in the book?
Yeah. So the whole thing kind of started with a conversation between a friend and I. She's um, a big reader, and she's always sort of like been somebody that I bounced ideas off. And one day I was just throwing around names and was like, "What about like the name Genesis?" And he was like, and a sister named Isaiah. And I was like, okay. So then I had to think like, well, who would name their kids this? Like what would be like their background? um, and then, yeah, I was just like, oh, it'd be people who are very into the Bible would probably read this. And um, where I lived, people were very religious. So it pretty easily came to me that was like, it's set in a town that's a lot like my hometown. Um, so that was sort of the impetus of it. Um, and I don't know, I think I really love Isaiah, who is the younger sister. She's really just fierce and impulsive and like the complete opposite of me. And if she was real, she would really, really get on my nerves. so it's kind of ironic that I'm like, oh, my favorite one is the one that like in real life she would be like the least favorite
You're total
person.
opposite.
Mhm. But she was kind of fun to write to just get into that mindset of like nothing. I wouldn't make any of the decisions that she made, and just kind of hearing making this character who was just not the antithesis of me essentially.
That's the fun part about writing characters, I feel, is that they're usually people you wouldn't really probably hang out with the real, but they're just like they're interesting, and they gotta have that extra to them because you gotta keep the reader interested. So I definitely know how that goes. I have characters I wrote that I would never even probably be friends with, but they were good for the book. And also, so when you came up, you said there's not really a plot to it. So explain that. Is it more towards like the characters' stories, or is it just centering around a certain point? Because I know you also, it's kind of like cult is involved as well. So that's the other part that I'm interested in. I guess like was he like a cult leader or
Yeah, so there is a plot. It just like the big plot points are pretty like far apart, and it is a fairly quiet book. Um, if you've ever read like Marilyn Robinson's Housekeeping, I would say it's probably like on about that level. Um, there is a shootout, so got to have that Western shootout scene. Um, so it does like move, but it is a lot more character driven. Um, so it's, sorry, the question, what was the question again?
oh, no, I was just asking. So I know you said there wasn't really like a plot, but like, is it more centered around the characters? I guess in their story or their perspective. I guess are they narrating it, or would it be more about the West in general? I guess.
Yeah, so it's more about the characters, um, and the it's these two. They start out quite young. I've heard someone refer to it as a young adult novel. It is not a young adult novel. So for any parents out there thinking that they should, if you're worried about PG-13 related stuff in your children's reading, um, this is not the book for that. But they do start out young. They are,
Okay.
before teenage years in the first half, but they are adults in the second half and still very young adults. By the time the book ends, they're in their mid-20s. So it spans 15 years, and is a first person perspective.
Mm.
And each sister sort of tells her story. So it alternates between their two perspectives. Um, Isaiah does speak in first person present, and Genesis speaks in first person past. So, and it's sort of them dealing with, being women in this very rough world, and they um, coming up in this world, especially when there's misogyny, and then there's this cult leader who is very charismatic and gets their mom to come, live on his little community,
Oh.
uh, and the girls end up there for a time as well before they sort of escape. So there's just sort of a lot of play of like the girls trying to come up, and dealing with sort of the trauma of their mom abandoning them and then coming back and taking them somewhere where they are mistreated, um, and sort of have religious trauma after that. And the leader of the community is a little more than meets the eye. He's got a little more going on. I don't really want to give it away, but he's
Yeah,
got a
I
little
don't
more.
want you to tell the whole story. I'm just kind of picking your brain on that. I know it's going to be released, just kind of seeing the concept, I guess, of how you did come up with it. But you're explaining it really well because I'm like interested. I'm definitely going to pre-order. And is this your first book?
Yeah, so this was my debut novel. It was actually my MFA thesis.
Hmm.
So, and so it's taken, I finished it in 2017, very rough, turned it in for my thesis. And
Trying
then
to turn it into a book.
yeah, it's been what, almost like 4.5 years now.
Wow.
Um, it got picked up for publication in 2021. So it took a little while. Um, so it's taken 5 years to come into fruition as a book.
That is great. That's a great way to put it because I'm always telling people, especially writers, like you never know. Just keep trying. It sometimes does take years, and even if you have old things that you've written, you can always tweak them or work on them later or turn them into something else. It's like don't throw your work away. Just keep working towards it. And that's a great example of that of putting work towards it because, like you said, that's a while, 2017, and there's always the getting rejected and the other stuff that comes with it, but you kept at it, and that's great. Are you excited about the release date? I know
Yeah,
you
I
are.
I feel like I'm just sort of it hasn't quite hit yet. Like
I get
I
it.
have hard copies, right? Because I got my author copies and I like other people have read it and done reviews for it and I'm still just like, "Oh, it doesn't seem real yet." That I like have a book out in the world. So I think it just still hasn't quite hit me yet. That I'm like, oh yeah, I like have a novel, like an actual
I think
physical.
yeah, and once you do, I love the holding of the book, like especially when the author first holds their book. That's like the reality, but also it's the like the signings and seeing people like really lined up at your table, like it's like, oh my gosh, I have a book. Like if people are here to, like talk about it. So I think that's probably where you'll be like, wow, like because it's different phases for every author. But I love that you kept that as your first book and you're just kind of taking it in and seeing how you feel about it because that's a big feeling. It takes a lot to write a book and to finish it and to put it out there and to market it. So I just want you to
And
know
it's
it's great.
publishing is such a like slow process. So it's like, well, I've known it's been coming out for like 2 years and like not right. It took so long for it to come up.
Did
So
you self-publish or is it like a company that you went through or?
I went with a small press.
Okay.
So I submitted directly to them and they reached out. Um, and I actually was like, I don't know, they're a fairly new press. It's running Wild Press, and then they have an imprint called Rise Press, which is focused on um, sharing and raising voices of the marginalized. So my book is printed under that Rise Press imprint, but they have running Wild Press as well. So they're fairly new publisher, but the founder met with me via Zoom and like really talked me through it. And so I had a really good feeling about doing it with them. So if you are going to publish with a small press, I would suggest trying to reach out to them and contact somebody and see how you feel about it. The same as with an agent, I suppose.
That's great advice because people kind of they don't know the difference between the whole traditional publishing presses and the self-publishing, and it does take a while. Like you said, it took 2 years, so it's like if you want to self-publishing is a little bit faster, but not really, and it's just you got to do all the other stuff that comes with it, that all that marketing and stuff. So you are lucky with that, definitely. And you said it's called Rise Press. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
RIZ.
Okay, and I think I've heard of that for some reason. Unless it was, I think I might be thinking of another company. If that,
They're getting some traction. They've like
okay,
had reviews and stuff. And
are they located in Washington or are they?
they're in LA.
Okay, LA, got
Based
it.
out of LA.
And then let's see, what are there any other genres that you do write, or is this the only one?
I tend to stay in historical fiction. Um, My short stuff is a little more contemporary, but it's weird. I wouldn't say go so far to say it's like avant-garde. It's just like about like weird things.
Just
Um, like I had a short story about a couple who decide to kill each other, like because they just like are so unhappy in their marriage that they're like, that's it. We're just gonna like we're either gonna get boring or we have to kill each other. And the whole town like makes a whole like spectacle of it. Um, sort of like the lottery. So my shorter stuff is like still kind of weird, but still has like
where
an
can
air
I
of
find that? That's actually I'm weird. I love stuff like that. I actually write erotica and like adult fiction. I would have to warn my readers about my stuff. So I love stuff like that. You're preaching to the choir.
yeah.
Because I'm pretty dark. I get dark. So that's why I was like, I like that.
Yeah, it's called The Day the Barrowmans Killed Each Other, and you can find it. There's a link for it up on my website.
The day
I
the
think it
Bible.
was I can't quite remember what magazine published it now. I think it was Scribble, but maybe I should look it up.
I have to find that one. That's a good one because especially with us being married, it's like, oh, they're gonna. They said they're gonna kill each other.
It's
What?
I mean I feel like it's probably without like looking back on it now, I think my husband and I had only been in our first or second year of marriage by then. And I'm
That's
like, oh,
why.
that probably didn't do it.
Oh gosh! Wow, that'd be interesting. That's where I am. So it's like everybody knows in a marriage you do get to that point. You just really don't do it. But however long you've been married, everybody's got to that point at one time. So also, do you feel that we're lacking, I guess, females, especially in that historical Western genre? Because, like I said, I don't hardly really see many of us, especially, writing stuff like that. So, do you feel we're lacking females in that genre and like that subject?
Yeah. And I think part of it is that there just aren't very many brown, like black people in the West. So it's like it's a pretty like unique experience. Not to like make myself seem super unique, but right, like I was one of maybe like 5 people of color in my entire high school. Right, like people we would go out to another town and people would like look at us when we walked by. So it's just I think part of the reason why like a lot of black women just aren't represented in westerns is there aren't very many there
Mm,
now. But historically I think that there is a misrepresentation of the diversity that was actually in the West in sort of the early days of like the Wild West era. I think I read a statistic that was one in 4 cowboys was a black cowboy. And I think probably half of the cowboys were of color. So, and we don't really see that much. I mean, you've probably seen all those old westerns where
they leave us out.
they
Or
have the nice blonde lady who they've dyed her hair and braided it to make her look Native American.
exactly.
Um, so it's just I think I remember there was one John Wayne movie, and they had like one black guy that showed up, and it was like
And I,
some random guy that they met in the mountains.
yes, me and my dad, I think we watched that one as well. And I was like, oh, a black guy. Like, because we watched when we were little, when I was little. So that's why I said they really just left us out of that, Western type of thing. And it's like most of the time they were called cowboys because they were, black men going to get. So I'm like, I don't get why that became a thing of leaving us out. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure we were there. And I don't even blame what you're saying because I haven't been to the West yet. But any friend I've had that's gone maybe to even Washington, or they're like, I didn't see many of us, over there. So you're not lying.
Yeah, no, and like my owning it honestly was like so. I mean, people people like also had like the wrong terminology. Like they also hadn't like caught up on like what you call people of color yet, right? So it was like
Yeah.
really interesting. Now I think there are quite a few more children of color because there seemed to have been a trend of adopting children from Africa in my hometown. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's It's a it's an
Well, at least
interesting
it
take.
adds to the flavor, I guess. But that's kind of a weird trend. Like, why? Why is that a thing now? But
Yeah.
I guess that's good for them. But I want to go. I definitely want to come to like Washington, Colorado, LA, all that stuff. Because I've been everywhere to I think the east and just nowhere really west way. Like I haven't been to Las Vegas and stuff, and I want to go there. So I
Yeah, and it's
really,
like
really.
it's mostly for the most part it's safe. You're just gonna get a lot of people that are like, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Like, where did you come from? Are you passing through?"
That's why I just want to explore something different, like see places that's different. So it's like I feel like I've traveled a lot, but that's the only area I have not
Mhm.
seen, and it kind of irks me a little bit because people like I've been to Las Vegas and stuff. I'm like I've been all these places and I haven't been to Las Vegas, LA. I got to go over there. So and also I guess with that being said, what is a day life like in your regular life? Like what do you do for fun, or what do you do
Yeah.
besides writing?
Yeah, so as I had sort of mentioned at the top, I am an adjunct English professor. So my day job, my job that supports me is teaching English. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And then I have a 3-year-old. So right now there's a lot of fun conversation about, what we call our body parts and what we do with our body parts and what we don't do with our body parts. But like I like gardening. I'm really excited that spring's on its way. I'm starting to garden and um I what else do I do? Whenever you get that question, it's always like, oh, I don't think that I
You
do
got to
anything.
think about like what do I do during the day, and then besides
Oh,
writing, that's the hard part for a writer. They're like, what do I do besides writing?
yeah, I mean I really like dancing. I'm not good at it, but I love trying all the classes
You
and
said you have to be.
really into music, and so we do a lot of if we when we can afford it, we try to hit up a concert or yeah. So I'm quite a homebody, so I don't really go out
Introvert.
too much.
Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Especially like most of the writers, they're usually going to be introverted anyway. Don't really go out too much. Kind of like stay to themselves. But I think I'm kind
Yeah.
of a mix of
I love
both.
traveling, but I wish I could afford to do it more.
Yeah, because everything is rising. I give it that. It's hard and very expensive to go anywhere. It's like you just want to stay in the house. It's like if you leave out the house, you spend like $50 just walking through your
I
driveway.
know.
But
We always end up at Target whenever we leave our house or
so
Starbucks.
also, so what made you, I guess, start your writing journey? Are you inspired by anybody? Who's your favorite authors?
Um, yeah, so favorite authors changes a lot. Always really enjoyed Alice Hoffman. So she wrote Practical Magic, and
Okay.
she writes a lot of kind of not really fantasy, like speculative, magical realism. That's the word I'm looking for. She writes a lot of sort of magical realism, and I've always really loved her writing. Um, I also really like Diane Setterfield. She wrote The 13th Tale, which is sort of like a gothic family saga. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I tend not to read too many books by the same author for no reason other than there are just so many books that I'm trying to like read all of them. But so those are a couple of my favorites. As for me, it sounds super cliche, but I've kind of always been I've always written. Um, I think when I was about 8, so yeah, in about 3rd grade, I won my first writing contest and wrote like a little story about these friends who go find a planet made of candy. um, and the school had like bound it, like I won the contest, and they bound it into like a hardback book, and my family still has copies of it. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so I've sort of just been doing it all my life. And then I think I was about 12 or 13 when I was like, that's the thing I want to do. Like, I want to be a writer. I think that was the first time I realized, like, oh, that's a job you can have. Like, it's a career that you can do. And I had read an essay, like a personal essay in class about a guy who didn't want to do anything. When he was a kid, he just like had no interest in doing anything, and his mom kept pushing him to do a lot of other things. And then he had to write something for school, and it was so well done that his mom was like, "You should be a writer," and he was like, "Yeah." And it was just kind of that story for me. It was like, yeah, I didn't know you could just be a writer. Like I didn't know that was a job. So like that's what I want to do. So I've known a long time that I wanted to be a writer. I've been writing a long time. I have very terrible books that I wrote when I was a teenager, but I do have little manuscripts. They're very cute and it's not
good. You have a very natural. I like that you have a naturally vivid imagination like myself, but also we have kind of like the same backstory because 13 for me was like, oh okay, I want to write, and I won my first poetry contest at 13. So it's about the age I figured it out too. I was like, okay, I don't think I want to do anything else, and everybody says as long as you have fun doing it, it's really not a career. So that's the best part about it. And then also, what I saw for the first time was that your book has a soundtrack. I want to know how that goes and like who all made it and like what made you even think that you wanted to put music to this story.
I music is another really big love of my life. Like I am not good at playing music. I'm really bad at the piano. I'm really bad at the guitar, but I love music. I write with music. There was like always music playing in our house and just like eclectic music. Like my mom listened to every genre. And so I sort of grew up listening to a lot of music and just sort of like having it around me all the time. And so the playlist that I put together are songs that I just sort of had that I would put on to sort of get into the mood of the book. And then I sort of whittled it down to the ones that I think would best fit to scenes. So I did for a time want to go to film school. And I was like, I really want to be the person who puts the music to the scenes. I don't know what that person is called. I still don't know what that person is called, but I had thought like, ooh, that would be really fun and cool. Like I thought about that. And so I was like, I'll just do it. I'll just make a playlist. So yeah, there's the Valley of Sage and Juniper playlist is on Spotify. And it goes in order with the book. And sort of I do have it not chapter by chapter, but in certain like stages of the book, there are certain songs that I sort of envisioned would play if it was made into a movie, like songs I would envision that would play over that scene.
Oh, that's why I listened to it and I was just like, so this goes with the, and I'm like, I gotta pre-order the book now to got like the music with it. But you see people do that like for movies, and that's what I thought about. I was like, I've never seen anyone put a soundtrack with their book. Like that's pretty cool. So you should be that person. You should figure out what that is, like who makes the music to movies. Like what is, I always see like when the credits are going on, I'm trying to figure out if I can find the name, but that's probably a job.
Like, I don't know if that's the sound mixer's job. Like,
I don't know. Supervisor, I don't know. Like I'm like that was
I need to find one. I think if I had more money, I might have actually gone to film school, but I also don't. I'm not a big city person, so like living in LA or New York is just like not really my thing. So that also kind of stopped me from going to film school.
I want to write a script. That's actually the closest I would want to get as far as a film. But like, I feel like I could turn some of my books into a movie or a series. So I'm trying to see like how script writing goes and how you can just take that content and make it into a script, like the same way. That would be cool. So I'm like studying up on that, and it's a little difficult, but I think I can do it. So you can put the music to my script, and I'll just.
I love finding music. I'm always the friend that's like, I have a very specific niche playlist for this very specific thing we're doing.
Are you the DJ at parties? You're usually probably the person who does the music too.
I sometimes do, yeah. Like I often, I'll let other people play their music, and I usually am like, this is not working for me. But
My brother's that person. He's like the one who's like always breaking down his phone. He's like, "Who? What is this music?" And he's like got the best playlist for like everything, barbecues, weddings, whatever it is. He has the best playlist. So I say he should have been a DJ. And so, also, let me see. Final question. So, what do you want your book or your work to put out into the world? Like, what do you want to tell people with it? And also, what do you plan for the future? What do you want to continue writing?
Yeah, I think um, as I write more and mature more into like my own identity, just bringing to light identities that just really aren't put at the forefront that often, especially as a mixed person, trying to coming up with that story. It's always I feel like so many stories about being mixed race are really focused on like the confusion of being mixed race. It's like no, I mean like right, but there's other things. So just telling those stories and also just like having fun and like having I mean my main thing about most of my books is like do I like are the characters fun, is the story going somewhere, does it feel real, um, so just giving people something to sort of latch onto and make them think, but also give them a sense of like being in another place and knowing a new person.
Got it.
um,
That-
yeah, and so currently I am querying a second book, um, that it features two mixed race twins in the Gilded Age, so the late 1800s. One of them can pass and becomes a U.S. Marshal, and one of them does not pass, and she becomes a vaudeville actress with a dark side, and her own sense of justice. While her brother has, the lawful sense of justice, and that one also spans 15 years as they sort of move through their separate spheres. So that's what I'm working on now, while also having the Valley of Sage and Juniper come out.
Okay. I love that. That is great. So like I definitely like I said wanted to get to you because like I said we don't write western. That's what I love about it, and that you also are sticking with the historical fiction of it. Like a lot of people don't go back in time. They like to kind of be futuristic or I like futuristic. I'm not even gonna lie. I love telling some other people, but like to go in the past and do the westerns and everything. I love that about it. So I am definitely counting down to your book as well. And I'm gonna look out for some. I'm gonna look for that other story that you told me about too. But tell
Yeah.
everybody, please, where they can find your work, your Twitter handle, social media, websites. Just go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, so you can go to my website at shaygalloway.com. And you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Gallow Cat. I'm also new on TikTok. Haven't really done a whole lot on there. Haven't quite figured it out yet. But I am Shay Gallow Cat on Twitter. And yeah, those are sort of where you can find me. I also have a link tree in my bios. So.
I feel the same way about Twitter. I feel it's for entertainment. I think like for you to just kind of play around, but not really promote things. So I really don't bother with it that much. I'm like, it's a lot of editing work. Like, don't have that much.
It's also not very like when you have so it's just a learning curve, and I'm like my phone is not good enough for a lot of the stuff that they're doing on TikTok.
I have to have like a good like I feel like your phone. If you do a lot on your phone, I feel like it should be a good one. But if you really aren't on your phone like that, then don't worry. Like it's not that serious. But I loved having you today. I love talking with you about your book. I'm definitely going to be able to look out for it. Like I said, I'm going to pre-order so I can listen to that soundtrack along with it because I just love that. I love music anyway, so I'm going to pair that with it. But other than that, is there anything? Oh yeah, my final question that I always ask every author: what do you do to eliminate your writer's block if you ever do get it?
Um, watch a lot of movies. I just I guess I could sort of if I'm being pretentious, I could say I research other stories. It's mostly just watching movies.
That's a good one. That's a new one, actually. A lot of people say music or, kind of going outside or something. But watching movies actually does kind of pump your brain a little bit if you just watch something good or something nostalgic. So I feel that definitely. But all right, I'm not going to too much longer. I want you to get some rest too. So thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to post everything tomorrow on Instagram as well as my Spotify. If you get your podcast, you can hear it on there. But you are my first one season 3, and I thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing what else you have going on and whatever work you put out.